The Tesla Model Y is the best-selling electric car in the world, period, this year. It's not even close. In fact, it's going to probably rank 5th or 6th in the world, maybe even 4th, potentially depending on sales over the last month of the year, in the overall best-selling vehicles worldwide. Next year, good chance it'll be in the top 2, very, very likely. But the price, well, it's interesting. Prices in some countries are insanely cheap. We're talking just under 40,000 US dollars. In other countries, it's more than 100,000. Bloomberg made a list and it wasn't quite right. There's some inconsistencies there. So I've made my own list of the price you'll pay for a Tesla Model Y in, well, pretty much every country around the world where they are sold. It's very interesting, and it disclosed to me some information that nobody has picked up about the German model, which is different to every other model in the world. I don't know why, but for some reason, no one seems to have noticed that Germany is actually doing something different. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Electric Viking. Great to see you. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Welcome back, everyone else. Thank you for tuning in and for subscribing to the channel. Let's bring on the electric revolution. Seriously, it's important. We need it. And frankly, I just drove my electric car here to work, to the office. So much better than driving a gasoline-powered bucket of junk. Seriously, whoever wants a transmission in a car, they haven't driven an electric car. It doesn't make sense. Transmissions, it doesn't matter how good they are. Why do you want that? I mean, seriously. So much better to drive an EV, so much smoother, so much nicer. Even the cheaper EVs drive better than pretty much any gasoline-powered car that I've ever driven anyway. And I've driven a few expensive ones. I actually worked when I was at uni in a car garage where we used to test out cars that were more than $200,000 and drive them around. And I remember one of their staff there crashed a $300,000 Ferrari into a concrete barrier. He was trying to do a little rev the engine, and I don't know what the idiot was doing, but anyhow, it was fun to see. And frankly, I just don't think some cars are all they're made up to be. If they're powered by gasoline engines, they have a transmission, and they just don't give you that same experience. Anyhow, Tesla Model Y. It's selling incredibly well. When you think about it, it's actually quite surprising because it's not affordable. Now, you guys in America, you're getting a bit of an unfair rap here because when the press makes these articles, when they say the Tesla Model Y is more expensive in the US, in Canada and Mexico and in Puerto Rico than everywhere else in the world, it's not true. They don't say that, but they say it's more expensive than most places around the world. They're not comparing apples with apples, and they know that. It's sort of intentional to make you get riled up. The reason being, this list is not a fair list. There's 4 models in this list, which are different to every other model. Now, every car in this range is the standard range vehicle coming with LFP batteries from China. Most of them, 9 out of 10, are CATL batteries. One model is using BYD batteries. No one actually seems to have picked this up, but I'll tell you which model that is in a second. So the point is, the standard range model has a completely different battery chemistry, and therefore it's a cheaper and more affordable pack to manufacture. Does it mean that it's worse? No, it doesn't, but it does have less range. The standard range model, or the long range model that you guys get in the United States, that's the cheapest model you can get, and you get that one in Canada, Mexico, and Puerto Rico. That is a different vehicle with different range. So the range of that model is around 530 kilometers, 330 miles. But the range of the standard range model being sold everywhere else in the world is 455 kilometers. So it's about 80 kilometers less. It's quite a difference. It's not really fair to compare that model against the standard range model from China or from Germany, because it's a different vehicle. It is. It's actually not just different in terms of range or battery pack. It's got different power as well. The long range model has quite a lot more power. It's a lot faster than the standard range model. It's got a few other little differences as well. So we're not comparing apples with apples. So in this list, you need to consider that those 4 vehicles from those 4 countries are a different vehicle being made in a different country and being made using different products and different motors. So it's not really fair for Bloomberg and all these other publications to come out and say, look at this outrage, look at this. They obviously intentionally know, or they're stupid enough not to know, that's a different vehicle. Anyhow, let's just look at this and just keep that in mind when we look at these prices. Most expensive Model Y in the world, for good reason, is in Singapore because, you know what Singapore is, right? they want it to be very hard for you to own a car in Singapore because it's a tiny country with 5 million people in it and there's too many cars. So they try to make the cars very expensive and therefore that's where it's most expensive. It's got nothing to do with Tesla. Of course, Bloomberg's making out like, oh, look at the outrage. Tesla is ripping off everyone in Singapore. Poor Singaporeans. Tesla is taking them. It's not the case at all. And even when they interviewed people in Singapore trying to get them to take a bite, to take a nibble, give them a soundbite, they wouldn't do it. They were like, no. The price is because of the taxes in Singapore. It's got nothing to do with Tesla at all. In fact, that's actually the case for most of these countries. There's some key reason that the prices are higher. Now, the Bloomberg list didn't have India in that list because India is about to appear in that list within the next week or two. But we do have a price for India. The second most expensive place in the world to get a Tesla Model Y, standard range model, of course, is Israel, $100,000 US. That's a lot. India is the next. 70 lakh is the price in India, or $85,000 US. And that all comes down to the taxes. There's enormous car taxes put on top of vehicles in India. Unless they're made in India, then those taxes don't exist. That's the key reason why BYD has begun making their EVs in India. It's really the only way to mass manufacture cars and sell them in India because the import duties are so incredibly high. Surprisingly, next was Mexico for $81,000 US. Of course, different model, the long range model, the American model. Then you've got Hong Kong at $74,000, Taiwan at $73,000. This is a weird one. $73,000 for Taiwan. But the thing is, the Taiwanese version is actually being shipped from Germany. So people in Taiwan have to pay, you have to factor in the cost of shipping the cars from Germany over to Taiwan. Now, nobody really knows why Tesla only sells the German model in Taiwan. Some sort of diplomatic stuff with China. There's a lot of speculation, but nobody actually knows the real reason. We're just speculating. Now, this is another interesting one here. South Korea, $73,000 US. South Korean government are lobbying the United States government, saying the vehicle incentives, right? The IRA $7,500 US incentives for American-made cars can be from any brand. Doesn't matter if it's from China brand or whatever it is. As long as it's made in America, they get the credit. South Korean government is up in arms, saying this is illegal. But the interesting thing is, I did a bit of research. South Korean government does exactly the same thing. Oh, that's funny. Isn't that ironic? I bet you there's actually been a fair few Americans up in arms about this, saying this is not fair to people from outside of America. You Americans, maybe it's time before you say that, do some research. If you're going to say, oh, we're doing this to another country, actually find out if they're doing that to you. And they are. Look at the price in South Korea. You know why the price in South Korea is $73,000 US? Well, you can figure it out. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? They're doing the same thing. The taxes apply to cars from a foreign car company. They do the same thing. It's just done in a different way. Now, next was Sweden at $67,000 US. And the Tesla Model Y actually sells pretty well in Sweden, which is surprising. It's pretty expensive for the standard range model. Then the US, $65,000. That's the long range model. Canada, about the same price. Long range model as well. UK was probably the most expensive, or nearly the most expensive in the European region. $62,000 US in the UK, Poland 62, Hungary 62, Croatia 62, Finland and Denmark all the same. But then the UAE, I didn't even know that Tesla sold the Model Y in the UAE, but yeah, they do. And as you can see, we get some strange anomalies start to occur here. For example, the Tesla Model Y costs around $50,000 US in France. However, it's $9,000 more expensive, pretty much almost right next door, in Germany. I'm curious, if you're in Germany, would you just drive down to France, buy a Model Y there, and then drive it back and change your registration? I mean, it's the same car. Or is it? Maybe it isn't. Now, if you go onto the Tesla website and you select and say you're from Germany, you want to buy from Germany, you'll find the range of the vehicle, the standard range vehicle, the cheapest. They have three options. They have the long range version. Not many countries do this, but in Germany, Tesla offer the long range version, the performance model, and the standard range version. But the standard range version has less range than the same version from every other European country. In fact, from every country around the world that sells a standard range version. Standard range has 455 kilometers of WLTP range. Doesn't matter which country you're in, that's what it's rated at. But in Germany, it's rated at 430 kilometers or 25 kilometers less. I believe the reason for that is the German model is not using CATL's batteries, but it's using the BYD Blade battery, which has 25 kilometers less range. But you're paying $9,000 more for it. Strange. Anyhow, if you live in France, you can see why the Model Y is selling so well in France. But the question is, how is it selling so incredibly well in Germany at $59,000? I mean, it's dominating the market. Model 3, same thing. It's a bit of a surprise to me. I don't understand it, but it shows you this enormous demand for electric cars in Germany, in particular for Tesla's electric cars. Now, the cheapest place in the world you can get a Tesla Model Y long-range model is actually in Puerto Rico. You can get one there for $58,000. Now, fast forward all the way down, and you'll see here in Australia, the Model Y is actually very, very affordable. It's $49,000. In New Zealand, it's about the same price, about $49,000. And then the cheapest countries in the world. The cheapest countries in the world start with Japan, $46,000. Slovakia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia all sell the Model Y for $44,000. I think that's an absolute bargain. You can see why the Model Y is actually selling pretty well in those countries too. Fast forward all the way to the bottom and we have China, $40,000 in China. Personally, I don't think there's a problem with demand in China. I mean, the media says there is, but that said, nearly 60,000 were delivered in China last month. It was the second best-selling car in the country. Doesn't sound like a demand problem to me, but that's just me. As you can see, the Model Y is priced vastly differently in different countries around the world, but the media are trying to frame this. It's some sort of Tesla scheme to get more money from people. The truth is that generally the reason for these price discrepancies and differences isn't the market. It's actually rules within that market. Whether that be taxes or duties, generally that's the key reason for the price differences. The only country there that is an anomaly really to that rule is China, where the truth is there are so many electric car companies that Tesla have to price the cars more affordably in order to compete. And this leads me to my final conclusion. What happens when every country in the world has the China's market? I mean, it's not going to happen, right? But eventually it will happen in more places such as Europe, the US, Australia. It's starting to happen. We're starting to get cheaper EVs from China here. What happens? You know what happens? The price comes down. So what we need for cheaper EVs is cheaper EVs. The more cheaper EVs we have, or at least the more EV models we have, the more downwards price pressure is put. The Chinese market is the perfect example of that. So companies like General Motors pricing the Chevy Bolt at an affordable price, companies like MG, BYD, Aura, etc. The more of those that we have making affordable, compelling electric cars, the cheaper electric cars will be for everyone. It will happen. It's just going to take a few years, but we'll get there. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.